Learning as a schus refuah shlema for Ilan Chai Bas Serach. We're going to just review to get us back up to where we were up to. 4 lines on the top on Nun Dalet Amud Aleph. Tana. Nevad shaloi also b'shachaveri mutter. When someone is oived his own animal, it becomes asur l'gvaya. But if his friend, it doesn't become asur. Right? We said it doesn't become asur to bahana. An animal doesn't become asur bahana, but it can become asur l'gvaya. For a mini is nevad. What is nevad? Kasha evdim I say bein b'shayik bein b'meiz bein b'ainis bein b'rotz and hayanis heichidami. We say nevad that becomes asur. Doesn't make a difference what the circumstances were. It could even be b'meiz bein b'ainis bein b'rotz and what's an ainis. Lav going to honest behemoth chaver v'shtachavah. Doesn't it mean where you do it against the wishes of the owner? Where Ruvain or Tom bows down to the animal that belongs to a second person, which is against the wishes of the owner. Rab Chama loy. No, it's not true. It's so the Chayrit our first Bryce. Our first Bryce said you can't ask someone else's behemoth. And here we're saying ma'anas you can. Rab Chama loy. It's not talking about that kind of inus. Where Avdi Kechavim put a gun to his head and forced him to bow down to his own animal. You can't aser from Ligvaya, the behemoth that belongs to someone else, but your own behemoth you can, even though it's against your wishes. Maskal of Zara, inus Rachmana Patre. How can holding a gun to his head cause his animal to be aser? The Torah says einus rachmana patre, that an einus is not, he's not, it's as if, in some form we're saying it's as if he's not doing it. So how could it become aser? The civil nairalis aser davar. The Torah says that you didn't do the Torah says that you don't do anything to a naira who is ma'unis, who is forced against the will, someone who was born her against the will, because she didn't do anything. Everything was included in the Torah said you can't be Avoda Zara. And when the Torah says you should live with the mitzvahs and you shouldn't die with them, that's coming to exclude an einus. It's coming to tell you that even an einus is not going to be chayiv, even on Avodah Zara. But then the Torah goes back and says another iser l'gabi Avodah Zara that you can't be mechal l'shem Hashem. Dafilu ba'einus. That's coming to tell you even ba'einus. Okay, so on the one hand we have that it's included in v'chai bohem, and then we say v'lois chalu shem kachi. Haketzan habetzina habefer hesya. So he says it's a nechiluk between betzina and befer hesya. Betzina, one is allowed to be Avodah Avodah Zara, but not befer hesya. So we see befer hesya there remains an iser of being Avodah Avodah Zara ba'inus. So there is such an iser, and so that could be the explanation of the second brisa that says bein ba'inus bein b'ratz. It means we are forced, in spite of the fact that we say einus rachmana patri. Only Rabbanan l'Rava Tanya Masayel. I'll bring you a riot that this is true. The b'musiyos shel evdei kechavim b'shas gzeira. The statues or the things that hold up the avodah zara, the pedestals, during the time when there's a shas gzeira, when the goyim are forcing the Yidden to bow down to idols. Even though the Gzeira is batal, and the Goyim are no longer forcing them to bow down, they don't become batal. So how could it be? Either the Messiahs don't belong to the people that are bowing down to them, and even so we're saying they become Aser. It must be, I'm sorry, no, we're bringing a raya l'gabi Einis. So we're saying that even though they were forced to bow down to them, it's still going to become aser. I guess we're talking about where theoretically talking about where it does belong to them, but they remain aser because it's befahesya. Amalu imisham ha loy tisayin. He says because of that you can't bring a raya. Aim Yisrael mumuhu paluch labaratzim. He says there are always those yidden who are mumrim. They're doing it willingly. It's not just a one-time thing because they were forced. So even though we could say 99% of the Yidden are doing it ba'inus, but there's one yid who was okay with it, and that's the reason why it's asa, because it wasn't really an inus. Rashi Amalei Emer. Don't say, let's say. Elavada Yisrael Mumu Palach. There's always a bad egg in the basket. There's always a bad apple. And we could assume that that's what happened. Chizki gives a different teretz. So we had to answer the stira, right? We said that when someone's oived the avodah zarah is chaver, that's not going to be aser. But we said that ba'inus is aser. So we thought einus l'chayra means when someone is oived someone else's avodah zarah, and then we said no, it's talking about einus where he was forced. Chizki goes back to the original pshat that the second brisa is taka also talking about where one person was being oived someone else's avodah zarah. Chizkiya, so why do we say nevad shachaver is mutter, and then we said it's us? So Chizkiya mekayin shenisach lavetz gechavim al karnel. We're talking about he wasn't stam oived it by bowing down to it, but he poured wine on the head of the. He did his whatever kind of avodah zarah, whatever kind of worship he was doing. He did it on the horns of the animal, so it was directly on the animal. He says if he's pouring down and just the animal, he uses the animal as the platform for pouring wine. That's just like if you stand on a table, if you're standing on a carpet, you don't say the carpet becomes also because that's where he did the avodah zarah. We're talking about where he didn't. It doesn't happenstance that he used the animal as the place for pouring the wine, but he was directly. That was his intention. He wanted to use the animal as the actual part of the avodah zarah. So that's the reason why it's also. Sagt the Gemara. I'm sorry, no. Now, I'll bring you another example that even though we said that being over a behema is not going to answer it, if you bow down to a behema, but if you do a maisa with the goof of the behema, that will answer it. The asa ula amar Rav Yechon. Afal pisha amru hamshtachel lehem es chaver le asa asa b'maisa asa. Amalu Rabbi Nachman and Puka v'amalei leula. Kratig Rav Huna l'shmaitzach. He said, go tell Ula that we already heard an explication of this rule. The Bavel, he already said in Bavel, the Amar of Huna, if a behema of your chaver, someone else's Ruvain's, I don't know if we're talking about a guy or a yid, but there was an animal lying down in front of someone else, of a different person. It was lying down in front of Levis Gechavim. Kivin sheshachat bal siman echad. Since he shechted one simon of it, asra, it becomes asra. So that's a raya that you can, if you do, since he did an actual shchita, he did a mice in it, even though it belongs to someone else, it becomes asra. They all ask that we've been talking about asring legvaya, and that's over there talking about asring bahana. So how could you bring a raya from it? So they say that over there we're talking about doing more of a maisa. So if that becomes asa bahana because you're actually shechting it, so we'll sort of make an extrapolation that when you do a lesser maisa, like pouring wine on the horns, that will be enough to asr ligvay.
It was shechted for the purpose of avodah zarah.
Yeah, but it belongs to someone else. Right? Let's say Reuven goes and grabs Shimon's animal and shechts it l'avodah zarah. So does Reuven have any rights over Shimon's animal to make it asa b'hana? So then afterwards it's shechted. He shechted it with the kosher shchita. So it's not an avela. So maybe Shimon can eat his animal in spite of Reuven's thoughts about it, right? Like just like you can imagine if you have a diamond ring on your hand, and your wife's wearing a diamond ring that's worth $50,000, and then the guy next to it starts bowing down to the ring. Does she have to throw it out? No. But when he does a maisa, vice states that there is such a thing that he can asa the ring. If there'd be a way of him pouring wine on the ring, it would be asa ligvaya. even though it doesn't become aser bahana, it would become aser likvaya. It wouldn't be able to be hukdash l'shemayim.
But here we're saying it's also about no.
Right. So that's the question that all the achronim ask. How could you make a tushtal from this Gemara Hoysa behemach chaver revutza, where we're talking about asering bahana? And they say that the shechting for when you actually make a physical change, it's not just doing it on the animal, but you're actually doing something that you make a shinui. It's like a shinui. Shinui is kaina, so that's able to even make a iser hana. Zakdamar minala on the asra. Where does it come from this din that doing a maisa in the behema can aser it? Hila and mekahanev, you'll say from kehanim, which Rashi explains. You see the Rashi about 10 lines up. So Rashi inem mekahanim shehanusim malcha Yisrael lasis kaimrim lavaydz kechavim. The goyim, no, not even the goyim, the malcha Yisrael, they were evil kings, would force them to become priests. The Kehanim say, you were always the Kehanim, now we want you to perform the same function for our Avodas Kechavim. And they forced them to it. Those Kehanim, even though they were forced, were never able to do Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, even after they got rid of the wicked kings, the Rishayim, that were forcing Avodah Zara. So the Damashani Kehanim, the Bnei Deyaninu. Kehanim could be worse, that they become asered even though they were doing something against their will by someone else, because they're making a choice. In the end, they're sentient beings. The Ela me'avnei mizbeach, you say from the avnei mizbeach, which we saw earlier, that they placed it in geniza, never to be used again, even though the mizbeach l'chayra belonged to the Yidden, and the Goyim were the ones who used it for avodah zarah, so it shouldn't have been able to become aser. So Rav Papa, like we said, we quoted from Rav Papa, we had that he said that it becomes when they did the conquest of the Beis Hamikdash and they took it over, they were kind of the Avnei Mizbeach. We learned from a pasuk that when the Beis Hamikdash was conquered, the Yevanim took away, they were mechalal whatever was in it. The element kalim, you bring a riot from the kalim, like we saw the pasuk to Sib. As kol kalim asher hizniach hamelech achaz b'malchusei. All the kalim that the melech harosha achaz took and were degraded during his malchus. The moaloi, when he was moal, when he rebelled against the Rebbeinu hichanavik dashnu. They prepared them and they were makdash them. Gonzanim. The hachana that they did was that they put the kalim into geniza. So you see that the Melech Achaz was able to, against the will of the Yidden, make their kalim also to use. So how could it become also? Even the Avibu Maisa Itzru. The Melech Achaz, even though it didn't belong to him, he was able to aser it because he did a Maisa, so that's a raya that doing a Maisa can aser. Even though we have said that if you bow to a mountain, right? Haharim v'loi Eloheim v'loi haharim, that you can only aser the Avodah Zara, but you can't aser the mountain that it's on. Very similar din that if you do a physical change to the mountain, you dig in it ditches and caves, it can ask. Even though we said you can't ask mahana bal chayim by bowing down to it, there is a backdoor way to make a bal chayim, an animal, become aser, is if it's traded for an avodah zara. If a yid has an avodah zara and he sells the avodah zara to a guy in exchange for an animal, that animal will then get the iser of hana on it, even though the thing that he sold remains aser. But this also becomes aser. The question is, if Ruvain sells his avodah zara to Tom. So now the animal that he got in exchange for the avodah zara, Reuven got in exchange for avodah zara, is also going to be aser b'hana. If he then takes that animal and exchanges it for a second animal or for a vase, does that vase also become aser? My time at the Amanda Amar Chalipe and Chalipe Nasur. And according to Amanda that the second exchange is also Asr. Amar Krava Yisachayim Kamayu. Kol Sha'ata Meya Mimenu Hareyu Kamayu. The Torah says it should be Asr Kamayu. The Torah is really talking about the Yidden when they went into Eretz Yisrael. If they don't destroy the Avodah Zarah, they're going to, that the Bnei Yisrael are also going to become Asr. So we dash it to mean that which is whatever comes from the Avodah Zarah will be similar to it, that it also will be Asr. So that means even Chalipe V'idach Amakra, who says, Pasuk says, Leisavi Se'evel Beisech V'yisachem Kamay Shakas Extended Tavenu Ki Cherem Hu, because it is Cherem. V'loi Chalipe. It's a limitation, only the thing that's exchanged and not the exchange for an exchange. What does he do with the who? Lemute Arlo Klaya It's coming to a Mayat Arlo, which is the first 3 years, the fruit of the first 3 years of a tree, and Klaya Karam from mixtures of different produce that were planted together, that they're both Asabanosh and Machron, the Kiddush B'Demein Mekudeshes. That if you sell them and you got something in exchange for what you sold them for, which you weren't allowed to do, what you got in exchange, if you Mekadesh an issue with it, that is not considered something that's Asa Bahano, which that money that you got in exchange is not Asa Bahano, and therefore, if you're Mekadesh with that money, the woman will be Mekudeshes. So Arla and Klai Karim, there's no Isser on the Chalipin from it. We don't need a miyat. We just learned about Avodas Gechav. We're going to see in a minute Bashvius that both of them, the Chalipin is Aser, and we have both of them, it says that. So you wouldn't learn out, since there's two psukim, two places where the Torah tells you that the Chalipin is Aser, we wouldn't say anything else, the Chalipin is Aser. There's no need for a pasuk to tell you that the Chalipin of Arla and Klaya Karim is mutter. We saw by Avodas Gechavim that the Chalipin is also Shvius. What do we see? Shvius Techsiv Ki Yoyvach Kadosh Ti Alachem. It says about the produce of Shvius that it's a Yovel and it should be Kadosh. Ma Kadosh Taifas is Damav. So we compare it to a Hektish, just like something that was Huktash for a carbon or for Bedek Habayis. If you take money in exchange for it, the money gets the kedusha from the thing. You could be paid to the hektish for aser. Ashvius tefeses lemeh v'asura. So too by shvius, when you exchange it for something else, the thing that you exchange it for also becomes aser. So it can be makadosh tefes says dama v'yotzel l'chulin. But the Gemara says, how could you compare shvius? How could you compare shvius to hektish? By hektish, we're talking about pigeon. When you give money, when you have something that's hektish and you want to be mechalit, you give money, and then the hektish becomes chulin. But over here, we're talking about where you're exchanging money for shvius, and we're talking about a din that there attaches to what you're getting in exchange for the shvius, that it also is asa. But it's not being mechal the original shvius. That's still asa. So we're going to say Makadosh Tavis is Damav Yetzel Chulin. Actually, is Tavis Damav Yetzel Chulin. I would think that's the case. Tamaloi Matiyah Beviyasateh, that the Chulin, that the Shvius remains Aser. Okay, so how does this work? So we said the Chulin is Aser. What you would get in exchange for the Chulin for the Shvius is Aser, and the Shvius itself is Aser, but it doesn't attach to Chalipe. And if you continue to trade it, it doesn't keep on going, that everything that it's traded for, they both become Aser. So
how does this tie into the Erla and the Klayim then?
We had said about Erla and Klayim that they are not included. They don't have the same din as Shvius and Avodah Zara. By them, if you exchange
use it from the pasuk,
you exchange it for, the Arla remains Aser, and the money you got in exchange is mutter.
Okay,
We say it's a Shnei Ksuna Bon Kechad. We have both Avodah Zara and Shvius that the Torah told you the Chalipin is Aser. If the Torah wanted to tell you everything is Aser, it should have just told you, let's say, Avodah Zara, and we'd learn out everything from it. But since it said both Avodah Zara and Shvius, it tells you Shnei Ksuna Bon Kechad, Ein Melamdin, so Arla and Klai Kaim are not going to be Chalipin. But we said it's limited to only Chalipin that's Aser, but not Chalipe Chalipin. So how is it going to work? Haketzad, Lakach Perish Shvius Basa. If someone used Perish Shvius, which we said the Chalipin is Aser, so he used that Shvius and he got an exchange Basa, Elu ve'elu Misvar and B'Shvius, they're both going to have an Isser Shvius. Lakach Basa Dogim, if he went and took the Basa Dogim, he used the Basa to get fish. So now we did a Chalipe Chalipin, Yatza Basa Nichus Dogim. The Basa becomes Chulin, but now the Dogim has a din of Shvius, right? Because we said Chalipin is also not Chalipe Chalipin, but it's always going to be the last thing that's going to have the din Chalipin. The Dogim Yayin, Yatzu Dogim Nichnas Yayin, the Yayin Shemin, Yatzu Yayin Nichnas Shemin. Haketzer Achar Nitvis B'Shvius, or Pri Atzmai Aser. Whatever the most recent thing that you exchange it for, that's going to have the din Shvius, as well as the original Shvius, but everything in between, we're not going to say Chalipin is us. The other man, the Amma said, we needed who to be Moitzi, Arla, and Klaya Kerem, because he holds Shnikzam Banka Echad, you can't be Malamed, so that's why you need the pasuk of who to be Mamayid. Okay, now we're going to have a little bit of a break. We have some Agadata. Shalu was Askenim B'Raimi. They asked in Rome, they asked the Chachamim, the Goyim asked them, the philosophers, if the Rebbe Shalom doesn't like Avodas Chachamim, why doesn't he destroy them? Had they only been Ovid, pure Avodah Zara, that were not needed by the world, the Rebbe Shalom would destroy them. But they worship the star, the sun, and the moon, and the stars, and the constellations. Should the Rebbe Shalom destroy the whole world because of these fools? Why does everybody just destroy all the useless Avodah Zara and leave behind the ones that are needed? If we would do that, the Russian would do that, that would just cause more people to be ovid those things that are needed for the world. They'll say that they were spared. We're going to repeat this theme a number of times with very similar stories. Taravan, Shalu, Philosophin es Haskenim, B'Raimi. The philosophers asked Haskenim in Rome, the Rebbe Shalom doesn't want Avodas Chachamim. Why doesn't he destroy them? Had they been only Ovid things that are useless, he would destroy them. But they worship things that are needed. Should destroy them because of the fools. The Rebbe Shalom leaves the world working in its way. And those that are being Ovid, they're going to end up getting their comeuppance. Davar Acher, Harisha Gazel saw, they gave another example of this. Harisha Gazel saw Shalchitim, V'halch V'zara B'karka. Someone who stole a saw of chitim, an amount of wheat, and he planted it in the ground. Dinu Shaloi Titzmach, the Alpidin, the Rebbe Shalom should not allow it to sprout, because it was done through an Avera. El Oilam Kimin Hagei Noig. The world goes on its way. The Rebbe Shalom leaves that the world should work kafi ateva. Listen to the asadin, and the fools that do the wrong thing, they're going to get punished for what they did. Davar Acher, another example of this: someone who is mizana with an isha. Dinu shaloi tisaver. The Rebbe Shalom should not allow her to become misaber. She shouldn't become pregnant. El oilam kim nagi nagi v'helch v'shaitim. The Rebbe Shalom allows her to have a child, and her and the man who impregnated her are both going to get their punishment. Behind the Amar Reish Lakish, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Lo dayin l'shon she'osin sela shali pumbi. It's bad enough that when people are mizana, they're using my seal, the gufim, which is B'Tselem Elikim, they're making it profane, they're making it they're making it worthless. El shatrichen oisei umachtimin oisi bal karchi. They forced me then to produce a child. The Baruch Shalom is a shutef in every child. You're causing me to make a child against my will because he doesn't want to make a child that's a mamzer. Shal philosophem echad es Reb Gamliel. One philosopher asked Gamliel, "Kosabetei ratzchem ki Hashem alikecha eish oichalesu kel kana." The Baruch Shalom is a burning fire that seeks vision. Neima misak miskana ba'avdev and miskana ba. Why does the Baruch Shalom only have kina against those that are over Avodah Zara, and he doesn't punish the actual idols? I'll give you a mashal. There's a king who had one son. That son was raising a dog. And he very disrespectfully called the dog the name of his father. His father was Donald. Donald, he called his dog Donald the dog. He would make a shua by the life of the dog Donald. When the king hears about who does he get angry at? Ala ben he gets angry at the son. Does he get angry at the dog? I would say that he gets angry at the son. The dog is a unwilling participant in these shenanigans. So the philosopher asked him, how could you call the idols a kelev? You compare them to a dog that has no volition, they have no abilities. But the philosopher said, idols have some power. What makes you say that they have power? Only pamachas naflu dleika b'yirenu. There was a fire in our city. And the whole city burnt down. And the one temple of the Avodah Zara didn't burn. So he said, I'll tell you why that didn't burn. A melech basav that had a province that was rebelling. Who does he fight with? Does he fight with the living people or does he destroy the cemeteries? He fights with the living. So he said that the temple is a dead place. It's useless. So there's no reason for the Rebbeinu Shalom to let it burn. So you just made things worse. I said it's a kelev. I said it shouldn't be called a kelev because it has power. So you said no, it's not. It's not just a kelev. It's like a mace. If that's the case, why did the Rebbeinu Shalom destroy all of the Avodah Zara since they're so useless? If that would be the case that they only worship useless things, he would be mevatel. He worships all the different heavenly bodies, lafikim to the water sources, lageis, and to the valleys. Should he destroy the world because of these fools? Esef Asaf Kol Maal Pnei Adama. Do I have to? The Rishon says, am I required to wipe out everyone that rebels against me on the face of the earth? No, Hashem. Asaf Adam Behema, Asaf Oif Hashemayim, the Gei Hayam, V'Hamachshalis Hasarashayim. So I have to destroy the behemoths and the oifus, the birds and the fish and anything that traps or that the Rishayim stumble on. Saktamara v'chim ibnei sharisham nichsham hem yavdim in ha'olam v'alel adam hem oivdim. You're telling me I should just do the things that the idols that they worship, but they also worship people. V'karsi is adam yapnei adama. And then I'm going to have to destroy all the people from the face of the earth. Therefore the Rebbeinu Shalom says I don't get started with destroying the idols because it's going to end up also having to the same discussion that we've had a number of times, that then if you would just destroy the useless things, then they would worship the people even more. Shal Agrippa Sar Tzva as Rabbi Gamliel. Agrippa, who was the general of the army, asked Rabbi Gamliel, Sibita Raskim, Hashem Alekecha Eish Achlahu Kel Kana. Hashem is a burning fire that seeks revenge. Klum iskana el chacham b'chacham v'gibor b'gibor v'asher b'asher. People are only jealous of someone who's equal to them. So from the fact that it says that Baruch Shalom is jealous, or the Baruch Shalom seeks revenge against the Avodah Zara, for the Avodah Zara, that they're in the same category. Kaviyachol. Amalei Amshalom Mashalom Adavadam. He said it's not true. La Adam shenasa isha al ishtay chashuva mimenu. To a person who married a second wife on top of his original wife. Chashuva mimena ein miskanaba. Psucha mimena miskanaba. If the first wife will only be angry if the second wife is less than her, but if she's more chashuv, then she'll understand. So it's the same thing. The Rebbeinu Shalom, it's not that the Rebbeinu Shalom is jealous or he thinks that they're equals, but the Rebbeinu Shalom is more angry. They're talking about the Rebbeinu Shalom's revenge he's going to get against the Ovdei Avodah Zara. And if they're Ovid something that's useless, that's more of a taina against the Yidden who are Ovid Avodah Zara. That's what it means. The Rebbeinu Shalom is Kel Kan. Amalei Zunin l'Rabbi Kiva. Zunin said to Kiva, Libe v'libcha yada d'avodas koichavim less by mashasha. He said, we both know that avodah zara is a waste of time. There's nothing to it. But chazin and gavi da'azi ki mitbru v'asi ki mitzmedi. But we see people walk into the temple and they have a broken foot and they come out healed, right? You see like the faith healers. I can stand, I can walk. They get up out of their wheelchair. My timer. Why does it work like that? I'll tell you what it's like. There was a person who was very trusted in the city. Everyone would leave with him without Eidim. But Adam Echad, person came who didn't know him, and he used the Eidim when he would take from him. One time he forgot, and he didn't. He did it without. He lent him money. He gave him money to hold on to, and he didn't get Adam to watch the transaction. Amalei Ishtay. So the wife of the person who was the watcher, the one who was trusted with the money, let's see, he didn't have Adam. Let's go deny it. Because this guy, all the time, he was always doing with an aid, and now he didn't do with an aid, which is the wrong thing to do. If you set a precedent that you're always doing with Adam, it's going to look very suspicious if you claim that one time he didn't do with Adam. So he did something wrong. Anu navadas amanu. We're going to do something wrong because of what he did. We're going to do something different than what our regular practice is, that we always pay people back without Adam. Now we're going to ruin our business. Avkach yisurim b'shasha megash shemeshagan oisan ala adam mashbiin oisay shaloi techu el b'yayim pliny v'loi tetzu el b'yayim pliny v'b'shah pliny v'al pliny v'al sam pliny. When he makes a gzeira on someone of Yisurin, he makes exactly when it's going to end. It's going to end at a certain time, and through this interceder and with this refuah, and it happens to be that when this person's Yisurim were over, he happened to go that day to the temple. Amr Yisurin dinu shaloi neitze v'chayzerin. Would we say that therefore the Yisurin that were originally Nigzar, I'm sorry, the person who got this Gzar Din, I'm sorry, not the Rebbeinu Shalom was going to say this Yisurin that I've been placed, it really shouldn't go on him, because he's going to say it's because I went to the base of its Gechavim. Because this guy did something wrong, that he went to Beis Avos Chavim, this is the Gzeira who's supposed to be over today. I'm not going to make it any longer because he happens to be a Beis Avos Chavim. So that's the same thing, that when the people walk into Avodah Zara house and they walk out healed, it's not because of the Avodah Zara, that's just when they were supposed to be done. So you can't essentially, it's a big question. If you try to make a Hashgacha Prata story from Avodah Zara lahavdil, then you could say it's just a coincidence. That's why, yeah. It reminds me when I went, I'm sorry, I know we're late, but I just have to tell this too. I remember when I was a kid, I went to a seed program, and they brought someone to bring the Bible codes in. And to bring it as a way of being makar people. And I said to myself, this is so easily disprovable. You could probably do it with every book in the world. So it's when you try to make a proof from something that could be just coincidence, you're just making people have less amun instead of more. In any case, that the Rebbe says is going to bring suffering, bad suffering, and emonim, and faithful suffering. Royim b'shlichusam, they're bad in their shlichus that they have to do to get yisurim, and emonim b'shvuasam, but they're faithful that they're going to do it exactly what they're supposed to get. Amalei Rava bar Rav Yitzchak Rav Yehuda. Ha'ika beis avodas gechavim ba'asrim. There's a temple of avodah Zara in our environs. The chimitztarach amal lemitra, when they need rain. And it comes, it makes a cholam to the Avodah Zara and tells them, if you want rain, you have to shech the person, you have to sacrifice a human being. And they did it, and the rain came. So he said, do you see that there is some, how is it that it's effective? He says, Baruch Hashem, if I had died with it, I would never have had the opportunity to tell you this vart, the Amar Rav, that Rav said, that the Rebbeinu Shalom separated or given out to it's talking about Avodah Zara. That's Pentisa Encha Hashamayim Over Isa Hashemesh Yereach Zekhavim Chol Tzavei Shemayim. You're going to go be over the different constellations. The Rebbe gave that to you. So we darshan. The Rebbe made it easy by creating these avodah zara that are easy to. He made the shemesh and the yereach and all these things that a person could easily fall into avodah zara. The Rebbe to those who are leitzim, he makes it easy for them to do leitzanas, and to those who are humble, he gives a favor. Someone who wants to do the right thing, the Rebbe makes that easy. Someone wants to do the wrong thing, the Rebbe makes that easy as well. Shkoyach, and